All tracks are record enabled. That's my bad. Let's try that again.
Boop-a-doop-a-doop.
Rolling. Numbers are rolling.
I'm
Sketch.
recording.
Okay, sweet. So let's pull up the music, and then I will quote some Bloodborne here.
Fancy you.
Oh, it's because I can't think of anything else. Oh, yes. Pale blood. Well, you've come to the right place. Yarnum is the home of blood menstruation. Ministration, dang it. Menstruation doesn't sound right.
Well, dude, it's
Try to
it's
think.
that
Home
Menzies
of the
it's that
Menzies.
Menzies crack. It's like me. I put that seed in there, and
Oh,
you're like, I
no.
can't. No,
It's
it's
on the
Menzies.
brain.
It's
Period
on
on
the
the
brain.
brain. Okay, that's special for brochachos. I'm gonna try this again though.
Okay, okay,
And
okay.
there is a slight British accent too, but I don't know if I'm gonna do it. Okay, here we go.
Administration. I rolled my R like a administration. Hey,
The blood menstruation. The menses. Paisanos.
hey, paisanos. It's the Josh and Nate Super Menstruation Show.
Oh my goodness.
Gross.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh,
We're gonna
oh,
have
this.
to. We are just like for the record, we are gonna have to address how like gross this game is. Just like I'm not saying we need to go into detail. We just need to say like this game is kind of gross.
Oh,
It's
definitely. Yeah. At least there's some purpose to it. But okay, I'm gonna try this again. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. Oh yes, pale blood. Well, you've come to the right place. Yharnam is the home of blood ministration. You only need unravel its mystery. But where's an outsider like yourself to begin?
on the backlog breakdown.
Hey!
Suku.
Welcome to the Backlog Breakdown. We are your co-hosts, Josh and Nate. Thanks for coming this week. We appreciate you plugging us into your ear holes every time you do. Today, we are going to be talking about a strange, dark, somewhat, I don't know, psychotic game. A game that masochists enjoy a lot. That might turn you into a masochist slightly when it comes to video games, at least. I don't know. That game is called Bloodborne, as I'm sure you know by the title of the episode. But welcome. Here we are. We're gonna jump into Bloodborne in just a moment. But before we do that, hey, Nathaniel, how's
Whoa.
how's your fortnight been?
Well, you used my full name, and that threw me off. Like, I mean, like if you had thrown a middle in there, I would have been like, I didn't do it. Whatever, unless it was good, unless it was a good thing, then I might have done that. Unless it was a good thing I wasn't supposed to do, and then I don't know. Um, Pretty good, man. This uh, as of the time of this recording, I have transitioned back to just carrying one route.
Okay. Yep.
Now I am sort of still picking up a good bit of overtime, and it does sort of shuffle my schedule around a little bit. But oh, excuse me, edit that out or don't. I don't know. Leave it in. Whatever. It's a late one, folks. Um, but yeah, it's nice. It's a route where I know a lot of the customers, and they like me, and they're glad to have me back. And so it's nice to feel wanted, Josh. It's nice to feel
Yep.
wanted.
It's true. It's true. It
I
does
got
feel good.
I did get this sweet. Uh, I'm wearing it. I don't know if you can
Nice.
see. It's my
Excellent.
Ultraman T-shirt came,
Yes.
and I was like
Awesome.
I'm just sort of like leaning into that nerdom. I actually picked up my my issue number 1 of Rise of the Ultraman. with that sweet Alex Ross variant cover.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
He just does the cover. He doesn't do the art for the.
No, but the
Okay.
art's the art in the actual is I can't remember who the penciler and the inks are, but it's pretty good. I mean,
Nice.
it's pretty cool. I like it.
Sweet.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I'm so sort of like I'm like I like Ultraman. I'm cool with that. Like
And
Towns of
it's
Clown.
okay.
It's more than okay. It is good. How are you, man? How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a good couple of weeks. It's been kind of weird. We'll get to it in the backlog report. Haven't been playing very much, um, but that's because I've been busy with. It's weird. It's like I've been busy with relaxing. I don't know that that makes any sense. Um, Lots more like social stuff. I took off a couple days of work, and we actually went about an hour away and just got a little Airbnb over by what's called a lake. But around here, lakes are not. I mean, it's sort of a river kind of a thing. It's
Oh
we
wow!
we took our kids out to the lake or to the beach, excuse me,
I
the
like
beach,
you're like
and it was
the lake.
it,
He's throwing like the most pronounced air quotes
air
I've ever
quotes.
seen.
It was an ugly beach, but it's like my kids were super excited to go. So we were like, yeah, this is the beach. There's a little bit of sand here among all the rocks, and all the trash that people are leaving all over here. Like
Oh,
it it was a crappy beach, but we had a great time. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Like my kids don't know any better, and we're just like, oh, like this is not going to stop us from having a good time, kind of a
I
thing.
re
It was raining half the time we were there. It got
Oh
really cold
yeah.
one of the days, so they were like freezing when they were getting out of the water. But we had a great time. Like that was the whole point. What were you gonna say?
I remember. Excuse me there. I didn't yawn because your story was boring. I yawned because my brain is old and tired. Jeez. Um, Your story reminded me of I have this very distinct memory as a kid. It's sort of like it's like it was like 50 feet long and maybe went back about like 10 foot. And yeah,
Hmm.
it's just sort of like the sand that I think almost like somebody must have just like trucked it in and dumped it by this pond.
Yeah.
And but it was like I remember like visiting like spending time with some like family friends or something at this like state
Hmm.
park, and there was a beach, and it was like very much the same thing. It was like it wasn't really much of but you're kids and you're like, yeah, water,
Yep.
beach. And it's
Hmm.
like and now I'd be looking at the thing going, oh no. Oh no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. We're not doing that.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, it was totally that. Both my kids, the ones who are old enough to actually say anything about it, they both love the water just in general. So they had a great time. We all had a great time. It's just like you can let stuff like that get to you, if you really want to.
mhm.
But like the whole point was to get away and just chill. My wife's been pretty much locked in the house because she's got, we have a new baby. And on top of that, two other little munchkins. So it's just difficult to even go out. So this was intentionally just like, hey, let's just change it up. I've got a bunch of time off that I haven't used. Like, let's just try it, let's just go. And so like, yeah, our plans got changed, and it was weird. It's weird that we decided to go out to the lake like on pretty much the coldest days of the summer. Like it got into like the 50s and it's raining, so it's just like
Oh,
it with lots of wind. And so it's just like this is so weird, and we're just kind of chilling in this Airbnb, but like you just don't let that get to you. Like, no, we're
yeah.
having a great time.
See, I'm
This is
I'm
what it is.
actually sort of rejoicing at the cooler weather.
Mhm.
We
Oh yeah.
actually just we got a load of firewood, and so I'm gonna
Yeah.
be I'm like I'm entering into fireplace season. I'm just kind of like
Nice.
rubbing my hands together gleefully. Um,
I dig it. I
so
dig it,
yeah,
man. Yeah, so there was that, and then just spending time with. We had some friends come into town from out of state, which was
nice.
super cool. Yeah, found out they were pregnant, so that was
Oh,
exciting.
that's good.
It's their first. They've been married something like 6 or 7 years now.
Hmm.
Um, so that's exciting for them. Had some other, yeah, just hanging out, doing a lot of like social events and things like that. My son's birthday was today, and
Oh, that's right. I saw Sam posted something.
yeah, he turned 5 today, which is crazy that I've been a dad, out of the womb, for 5 years, which is, yeah, it's weird. I still feel like a child, and I have a few children. Strange. Um,
Hmm.
we'll talk more about that when we get into Bloodborne. No, I'm just kidding. Sort of.
It made you revert to like childhood trauma and
And well, I mean, the story has a lot to do with like birthing other things and yeah, just all kinds of weirdness. But anyways, I was yeah, just making a joke there. But no, it's been a good 2 weeks. It's been kind of a blur, but for good reasons. It's like things don't ever slow down, even when you're just chilling out, especially when you have children. But no, it was great. It's been great. So I'm doing good.
good,
Yeah, man.
good, good, good.
So rolling right in, if you want to
Yeah, let's
report
just
here.
get into it.
Oh, that
Oh,
was loud.
that
Oh
was a
man.
good one. It's a good
Yes.
one.
So, like I said, don't have much to report on. Really, I've just been playing Donkey Kong a little bit here and there. I probably finished a world or two since last time, and then just played a tiny bit of God of War, and that's really it. Well, I say that. Outside of that, if we were to count it, we did. So my son has been saying that. Every 2 weeks he changes what he wants for his birthday, but he's been excited for his birthday for a while. But the one thing that's been somewhat consistent is he said that I don't know how he got it in his head, probably some shows that he watches or whatever, but he's wanted a robot. So a few months ago, Costco had a sale on the Nintendo Labos. It was the robot kit and the VR
Okay.
kit. It was like $25 for both of them. So it's been sitting in our garage for the past few months, and we busted out the robot one, and we made that. Gave it to him for his birthday a few days early because we actually that was another thing that we did. We went out to the San Antonio Zoo, which is about an hour away, and that was a lot of fun. It's a really cool zoo. And on that day we decided to give him that present, and so we spent a couple days just like putting it together and whatever, and so playing with the robot model of Nintendo Labo. It's fun. It's a good little family activity too. So you've got basically it, you wear this backpack and this thing on your head, and you put the Joy Cons in both of them, and then you strap the straps to your feet, and you hold on to these arm things. And when you lift your feet, the robot moves around, and you
I was
you
watching the video of
nice.
you
hmm
sort of plopping around and yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's like not really VR, sort of, not really. On the TV, just because your actual motions have something to do with the way that it's going on the TV. So
Yeah.
it's pretty neat. Even if it is,
It
just
looked
like a mini
fun.
game. Yeah, exactly. So really, I mean, that's all I've been playing because I wanted to play some more God of War this weekend. I wanted to, but I wanted to also, since we're talking about Bloodborne, I thought I'd pick it up again because I haven't played it in months. Because I finished it, the first
Mhm.
playthrough. Man, it got. I don't even know the right expression. I was gonna say under my skin, but that's a bad expression. I just mean I started playing it
Would
and
you
I was
say
like,
it
man,
got into your blood?
yeah, there you go. That's exactly what it did. It got into my blood. And so I couldn't stop. Every time I was able to play a game, I just wanted to fire up some more Bloodborne. So I mean, probably 5 or so hours over the weekend between a couple different
Okay.
saves. Um, so enjoy that. Like basically just took down the cleric beast in New Game Plus, and then started a new game and took it down in that game as well. So with a different build. So yeah, we'll talk about that. But that's basically all that I've played. So not much. In terms of reading, I finished the Atlas Shrugged.
Okay.
So yeah, and I totally see what you were saying in the Discord, I think you mentioned it on our last episode as well, is that it I think it has a compelling vision, but I think it also I on the opposite end of the spectrum from like Karl Marx, where
Mhm.
I think he also had a compelling vision. The problem is that humanity doesn't work the way that he thinks it does. And I think Rand makes that problem in the opposite direction of like she assumes that everyone is well, everyone's the same person basically, and we all have these high ideals and we're all going to work really hard and
Well, no, she doesn't assume that, but she assumes that that's what people should be.
mhm
Um, this is what I'll say about objectivism, which is the
mhm
Randian position, and Marxism, is that yes, they are sort of two extremes: communism, Marxism, whatever. Like they are
mhm
two sort of like they are polar opposites,
mhm
but they suffer from the same problem. Is that there are actually good ideas that are sort of couched in them,
mhm
like caring for people and value. Like, dude, one of the reasons that like just that Marxism sort of arose was because the abuse of the working class.
mhm
And it was as a response to that, which is a problem that we have here in America. And you and I have sort of talked about like we as a culture do not respect good. We don't respect labor. We
mhm
just don't. And so, but it's like so they identify, and like with Rand, she identified a few things, but just they identify a problem and then they have these solutions that just like this is what kills me, okay? And I try not to get super political, but everybody who's sort of pushing for like this Marxist agenda or any sort of this, like, I don't think they understand that the word utopia means like literally something along the lines like a place that doesn't exist.
right, yeah,
So
like nowhere land or something, yeah. Mhm
even in naming it utopia, it's sort of a saying like this is the an impossible thing.
mhm
But we're all like, no, we can make utopia, and I'm like, no, you can't.
nope.
Ah! Like it's like yeah, and my head kind of just like I probably had a mild aneurysm there, and I'm just like, it's like, but it just sort of goes to like, people just sort of like, like sort of wear their ignorance on their sleeve, and they're like, we can fix, and like the problem is like, it's human nature. We're like, we can fix all these problems. I'm like, no, we can't, because the ultimate
Right.
solution, the ultimate fix, and I'm not trying to belittle this, but Jesus is the only working solution for all of this, and it's only
Mhm
actually going to get fixed and addressed perfectly when he returns and establishes, the kingdom eternal,
mhm
and or fulfills rather the kingdom eternal. But um, yeah, it's i- it's one of those things that like objectivism is interesting, and
yeah,
that's all it is. And
yeah.
there might even be like a thing or two that you can take from it and say this isn't bad, but the most of it is just like just throw it out. Like it's interesting,
Mhm
okay, move on. Like it's like interesting thought experiments, but then I mean like one of the problems I have with objectivism is that it treats greed as a virtue.
mhm right, right.
And sort of and sort of even in addressing Marxism sort of is the polar opposite of that, and says
Mhm
like you can own nothing, and it's
right.
everything needs to be for everybody else.
Mhm
And both of those are incredibly like just when it comes to property rights and things like that, like
mhm
both of those are incredibly problematic positions to hold.
yeah. And
Incredibly problematic.
and it's interesting. I would say, like, so it's a work of fiction, and it presents objectivism in a way that is very compelling. For the most part, it's like when you layer that on top of the real world, though, it's like, oh no, then you start to see a lot of the problems, and I do think there were a number of things throughout the book that I was like, oh, that's a really good point. I like how that's laid out. Like she does make some really good points. Oh, that's what I was going to say is that the other thing is that within this story, the character, kind of the hero characters, right, the ones that are the most the, living in this ideal of objectivism, are very much like uh, are idealistic to a point that like if there is any part of you that does not agree with this, it's in contradiction to everything else, and like it is very extreme. You can't just
Yeah.
have some like you have to drink the Kool-Aid, if that makes sense. Like
There's no room for nuance.
right, exactly. Like nuance is seen as a almost betrayal of these ideals, which I mean you see in any extremist group, right?
Hmm.
But I don't think it wants to. It paints it as virtuous, which is weird. Another thing that stuck out to me, as much as I enjoyed the story overall and some of the things that it was saying, another thing that stuck out to me is Rand throughout this story has a very low view of marriage.
Yeah.
Like the characters who are married are horrible, or are uh, like their marriage is always a bad thing for this person who's in this marriage, and the way that love is pictured is like it doesn't have any commitment. Like
Well,
the love interests are like because you reflect back to me. I mean, the main character of the book has multiple men that she has love affairs with, and it never says that there's anything wrong with that fact that she goes from person to person. And the people who are in marriages, yeah, they're just horrible. And it I mean, I get it in that they're kind of ideologues, the characters are at least, and so that plays out in their marriages. I
well,
get that. Hmm.
I would just sort of say, like, I think a lot of that, though, too, has to do with, like, some of the basic underpinnings and tenets of objectivism, which
Right.
is everything is transactional. Everything
Hmm.
needs to be leveraged. Everything is either profitable or it's either useful and profitable and therefore needs to be exploited, or it's just discarded.
Hmm.
And so when you reduce human relationships to and you sort of like use that as the metric to govern and define human relationships, well, you're just going to use people. Like it's
Right.
love isn't actually a thing that exists. It's
Hmm.
like as long as this person sort of like makes me feel what I want to feel and sort of and it's like it's not self-sacrificial. It's there's nothing that is in that particular context is solely about the individual. And again, that's like this is sort of the dangers of transactional relationships. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like when you look at people as things, or even if you sort of it devalues the human.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah,
so
and what you say, yeah, even self-sacrifice is seen as a vice, because it makes less of the other person, it within this idea of objectivism. And so, um, yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned on the last episode, she does make some very good critiques because often when we paint our lives as all self-sacrifice, um, it's really we're not being true. We're not, or excuse me, we are not being honest. That's the right word. We're not being honest with ourselves because often when we say we're being virtuous, it's virtue signaling, right? Or when
mm,
I'm in this relationship because out of self-sacrifice and I'm trying to help you, kind of a thing. It's like because we're
it's
trying to.
performative.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so it's not that both are true. It's that there's an element of self-sacrifice in true relationship. Like, I mean, honestly, yeah, the Christian ideal, right? Jesus sacrificed for his people. So we do place a high value on that. Um, but we also see our highest value, yeah, is God, and so that is outside of ourselves. It's not within ourselves. There's even a whole diatribe against original sin within the book that I was just like, ugh, yeah, you're kind of logically trying to get around something that is from your vantage point, it comes after your presuppositions have already been stated, kind of a thing. And yeah, it's getting pretty blasphemous at that point. But anyways, I don't mean to talk 10
Yeah.
minutes on this book. I did enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, it paints things in a very compelling way, but it also has some real dark points. Some of the things that are espoused within it are just like are unhealthy. I will say. And it but a lot of, like you said, its critiques are also very good as well.
Hmm.
So you do have to, not that you have to find a middle ground, but eat the meat and spit out the bones is basically what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. And then I started up another book the other day, just because I'm friends with Wes on Goodreads, and he had finished a book by Thomas Sowell. It's basically like his memoir,
Okay.
his biography, which has been really good. And darn it, I can't even think of what it's called. I'll cut this out.
Ooh.
Who?
Ooh. Ooh.
Come on, phone. It's
Don't.
called A Personal Odyssey by Thomas Sowell.
Okay.
And yeah, it is a good. So Thomas Sowell is an economist. He's a black man, and so
And he
seeing
is
him,
not very popular with the woke crowd.
right,
Yeah.
he's not. But actually, one thing that I've recognized, like reading this, is he doesn't pull his punches in terms of the way that people treat him because he's black. His upbringing, like he was raised in Harlem, which is kind of funny to say.
Hmm.
And so, and even he has a very strong kinship with the black community in general.
Yeah.
And so like he has this sense, and I say that because that is not my personal experience, because frankly, I'm a mutt. Like I'm Mexican, I'm Italian, and I'm Irish, and I don't have like strong ties to any of those. Like it's just not in me. So it's another person's experience that I like don't personally relate to, but it's helping me kind of understand. Okay, like some people do see it this way, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like there's just an immediate kind of kinship, and I mean it makes sense within minority groups because they're not the majority, right? So I mean I think that's kind of an easy explanation for it, but I've really enjoyed it so far. I'm like halfway in, and it's good. So
He's a very interesting cat. I've
hmm
the bits and pieces of his stuff that I've read or sort of listened to have been very good. Uh, I appreciate, like, and I think too it is interesting, yeah, because and I could be wrong, but I think overall, like, I'm a bit of a mutt too.
hmm
Like got some German in me, some Scotch Irish, but it's like I don't have a strong. I mean, I have a last name McKeever, and there was a,
hmm
but it's like I don't. I'm like I'm kind of Irish. I'm kind of Scotch. I'm just like I'm a mutt. Like I don't have a strong sort of ethnic identity
right.
or cultural sort of like touchstone. I'm just like whatever, and that is, yeah, definitely an interesting position. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never been, and I also came from kind of like lower middle class, if
Uh-huh.
that makes sense. Like I don't know if I've ever said it on this podcast, and not, I'm not trying to, Lord forbid, I hope I'm not virtue signaling by saying something like this. But like growing up, it's what I said about the beach earlier, like it was a crappy beach, but my kids didn't know any better. That was kind of how we were brought up as well. Like we had the electricity turned off a few times when I was a kid because my parents couldn't pay the bill, and it was just like, okay, that's just normal. will,
It
open up all the
happens. Yeah.
windows and like sleep inside. It's just, yeah, it's slightly uncomfortable, but it was never a thing like, oh, we're poor. It's just like, no, that's just life. You don't realize it until you're older. Like, oh, okay, no, I guess that was, and so like the neighborhood, we were
Yeah.
homeschooled, and so like so we were friends with neighborhood kids. That's just like where we found friends. So we were all of the same socioeconomic status. And so like it was never, I just never thought that, there was anything else. It was just normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been into. That's what I've been reading. That's what I've been
Hmm.
playing a little bit of. What have you been into? What do you have to report on, sir?
Uh, I got a pile of stuff. Not too much as far as gaming goes.
Hmm.
There a couple things of note. Beat I did complete a playthrough of Sundered.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
99% complete on that. I think I am going to come back to it at some point in time. It's pretty quick. Like
Okay.
you, you know, I think it was like 15 hours, which
Okay.
isn't but I tend to be a little slower and kind of obsessive, hence the 99%
Gotcha.
completion on the playthrough. Like I've
Nice.
pretty much found everything. I'm missing like one thing. Yeah, again, 99% completion. That game is very good. Very, very good. It sort of ranks strongly in my should play category. I think it's a very clever take on the Metroidvania genre.
Okay.
Has an absolutely the uh, design aesthetic is really interesting, really intriguing. It's sort of that sort of Lovecraftian uh,
Hmm.
sort of vibe. So I like it. I like it a lot. It left a very good impression on me.
Nice.
Uh, and I'm just kind of like, yeah. Uh, I I am sort of like wanting to sort of like intentionally play through a bunch of Metroidvania stuff, and
Hmm.
I have a list on GG that I am sort of curating, but I am also trying to avoid just burning myself out because it's like there's a way that you can go at that where you're just like, I'm never playing any of these again.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't want to do that. Um, so there's that. I did pick up, well, I picked up a copy of a Super Mario 3D All Stars collection
Yeah.
and haven't touched that yet, but I did pick one up. Megan likes those games more than I do, and so in a lot of ways
The 3D
that's
collectathons.
yeah. Um,
Just kidding.
but I did like Sunshine. I
Okay.
did like
Sweet.
Sunshine from what I played, and I know that Galaxy.
Okay, you just totally froze on my end. Not sure what's going on.
Is like so. Hey,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
can see you.
Okay. Yeah, you totally cut out and no audio on my end.
So we're talking, but yeah,
What's
we could
going
just. Hey, hey, why you have to be mad?
on?
Why you have to that Skype call? Um, can you hear me now?
It's cutting out a lot now, and like the video quality just like tanked.
Huh.
Okay. Wait, maybe. I think that's better. Okay. Yeah, it looks
Well,
better.
okay, okay. So I mean the collection outside of that, haven't like I've been oh well, Hades came out on Switch,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and I had been sitting on roughly $19 worth of like those coins or
Nice.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, well. I'll buy that for $1. And uh it I don't know. I've dumped a few hours into it already.
Hmm.
And I did fire up Bloodborne for a couple minutes just to sort of like run back through some stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's but we'll get back to, I'll
Hmm.
circle back around to that. But Hades is real good. Uh
Yeah.
it's uh it's it's an isometric sort of top down dungeon crawly. It's kind of Diablo-ish,
Hmm.
kind of. Um, in some ways, it's a little smarter, but it's also
Okay.
built in these sort of like very quick like play cycles. So you play for like 15-20 minutes, you see how far you can get, and then you'll eventually die
Yeah.
and you'll get kicked back to the beginning. And so far, I've played a chunk, but I haven't really like there's still a significant portion of the game that I haven't gotten to.
Hmm.
So I like it. It's smart, kind of. There's a random-ish element. There's it's hard to explain because there's so many like there's all these layers of mechanics sort of
Okay.
at play in that game. There's like basically a bunch of different sort of currencies that you collect to upgrade different things,
Hmm.
and some of those are like personal abilities, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's also um, there's some weapons to be unlocked, and then you can unlock so because it's set and like you interact with the Greek pantheon and
Hmm.
you get different types of power-ups based on which deity you're sort of interacting with. And yeah, it's
Nice.
very clever and very good, and I like it a whole bunch,
Nice.
and I'll probably be buying it again when it comes out on PS4,
Okay.
because that's the kind of sucker that I am.
There you go.
Um,
So
well,
did you ever play Pyre by Supergiant?
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
just thinking, how did you like that one?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Pyre's
Okay.
probably my least favorite. It's fun.
Hmm.
It's got an interesting hook. Like the swords and sorcery meets NBA Jam sort of thing. Uh, Pyre, I honestly I think like those matches or whatever, they're fine, but
Hmm.
overall, I just feel like Pyre is just probably the weakest out of all of them, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
It's fun. I would
Hmm.
even say it's good, but it's also kind of like, eh, they tried something and some of it was okay and some of it was not great.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. I was just curious. Just they
Mm.
seem to have a really good track record. So
No, it's a very good game. It's like one of those things that, and there are parts of it that I really liked.
mhm.
And I think one of the things you have to give to Supergiant is just that they make very visually striking games.
Oh yeah. Hmm. I mean,
And
just the presentation, the art and the music.
yes.
Both of those are top notch. I've only played Bastion and Transistor, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Uh, what is their music and sound director's name? It's not Jonathan Coulton, is it?
I don't know.
You know what? I have some of his music on my phone. This is
Ah,
the part of the show where I look at things. Um, Darren Korb, that's who it is.
that guy.
He's really good. He's very very good. But the guy who handles their like visual design or the gal or the team or whatever, uh,
Hmm.
they have a very like very good grip on aesthetic and how to utilize style and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, so I like it. It's it's very clever, and like I said, there are things about the gameplay loop. Sometimes, well, short version it's sort of like if Supergiant were to sort of tackle sort of a Diablo clone, this is that game.
Hmm.
But one of the interesting things is you'll play through, and it sort of combines almost like a roguelike sort of element. Like you play through
Hmm.
until you die. And then there's certain stuff that you'll take back with you and you'll upgrade and you'll get a little stronger so that you can progress. And the maps are changing and there's different pathways and stuff. And it's a very clever game, very well designed.
Yeah.
I recommend it. As far as any sort of reading or anything goes, I did. Well, I've been listening to a couple things. I have to look this up. This is super great radio. I finished Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson.
Yeah.
It's it's fine. There's
Okay.
actually a part of the book that happens towards the end that I'm kind of like, oh, I'm not sure that I can recommend this book. And there's this just one part that just doesn't really need to be in there. Um,
Okay.
it's inappropriate and it's inappropriate
Hmm.
on multiple levels, and it's kind of like, well, that I it was like one of those things where it did it wasn't a ton, but it was, yeah, it was just there was some uh so there's that. uh I've been listening to Area X by Jeff Vandermeer. That's the Annihilation.
Oh, gotcha. Hmm.
It's Annihilation Authority, and I forget what the last one is called, but it's that trilogy. And a little bit more of Range by Epstein, by David Epstein.
Okay.
So that's what I've been listening to. As far as reading, not a ton. I want to get back into Anna Karenina. I kind of, it's like I've been, uh, I'm like, I'm sort of a little, I'm sort of right around the halfway mark, maybe a little past that, and I'm just like,
Okay.
okay, like I'm a good chunk into the book. I just need to sit down and like make it a priority. But I did also pick up, and I'm staring at it, so I'm gonna make weird sounds. But I buy a ton of books, um, all the time. But it's called Faithful and Fruitful, and it's a series of essays for elders and deacons. It was edited by William Bokestein and Stephen Sweats, and Michael Brown wrote the foreword. But
Okay.
it's from the Reformed Fellowship uh, Incorporated Press or whatever. And I'll show you. I mean, but
Okay.
I
Nice.
I think I got it. I ordered it from Reformed Heritage Books or whatever. But just so I'm gonna start kind of working through that, and yeah, um, there's a little bit of the bearded gospel men thing.
Hmm.
So just, and this is maybe just me being overly picky, but there is I don't know, there's sort of a weird uh there's some problems with some of the essays in that book
Okay.
on just like these different saints and stuff, and some of it has to do with, and again, I think like I said, at least the one dude is Anglican, and so they have a much broader view of the church in general, and they include some stuff from Rome and Ethan Eastern Orthodoxy that I'm like, I'm not exactly comfortable with.
Hmm.
It's fine, and I think there are good things to learn there, but it also sort of like, it's one of those things where there is kind of like there are questions that I'm sort of like, there are also good questions that are coming out of that. And it does tend to be a little bit lighter fare, but at the same time, it's kind of It's an interesting book. So
Mm.
that's about the most. It's like it's there's some neat stories in there, but there's also just kind of well, it's but that's pretty much been about it. So
Okay. Yeah, that's a bunch there. I dig it. All right.
piles.
Okay, so we've reported on our previous backlogs and what we've been knocking down. So before we get into Bloodborne, get pwned, scrubs.
Get yourself some ponage. So, and in the spirit of that, uh, insert plug from friend.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Get
I don't know why I'm doing
pwned.
Looney Tunes. Um,
I don't know.
boom.
I have to go pee again, dude. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Okay. Go
Be
for
right
it.
back.
I'm just prepping. I've got a list of bosses here on my phone that I'm looking over. There's 22 bosses in Bloodborne, and at least this list that I'm looking at, it lists them in this website's favorites, and a good portion of the top like 10 are from the DLC. So I have not played a lot of these apparent best bosses in the game. I guess I'm just too much of a scrub because they're pretty rough. This is interesting. The last boss of the game is pretty high on the list. It's number 5. 5? Yeah, I can count. Number 5. It's interesting to me because I didn't find him to be overly difficult or anything like that. Um, so I'm surprised. But I've heard as I've been looking in more, what people prefer. And it seems as though he's a pretty highly rated boss, and I could kind of not take him or leave him. I mean, he wasn't bad. Um, it's just that in most Dark Souls games, well, in all of the Dark Souls games, excuse me, well, maybe not 2 so much. The last boss in 2 is pretty good, but 1 and 3, the last boss is like kind of intentionally sort of not super difficult. It's those games have a very big sense of melancholy, so you're not supposed to feel super triumphant when you beat him.
I missed all of those things that you just said, and that kind of bums me out because I'm sure it was probably interesting.
Just talking about Bloodborne bosses.
Yeah.
That's all.
Uh,
Looking at a list.
all right. Well, let's not beat around the bush. Let's just let's get into
All right.
this brutal thing.
So why we're talking about Bloodborne like 5 years later, right? Didn't it come out in 2015? I'm pretty sure it was a 2015 game.
I had the stuff pulled up to talk about that for just a second, and for some reason so I have like the screen time thing on there, and every once in a
Mhm.
while I'm like, ignore this for 15 minutes, and then it
Just
immediately like it
coming
pops
back
out,
up.
and then it's like goes right back into it. So it was released in March of 2015.
Yep, there
Uh,
you go.
it was developed by From Software, published by Sony, for the PS4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's it. The director was Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Yep.
And that's pretty much. I mean, there's some. There's a pile of composers on here, but in
Interesting.
North America, March 24th was the release date. In Europe, it was the 25th, and then in Japan, it was the 26th.
Oh, America before Japan. That's
That's
interesting.
according to Wikipedia. Um, it is a hardcore survival action RPG. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, and it's tough. And actually, what's interesting about this game is that uh, it is born out of the Souls games.
Ha.
But it's a direct it's in within the Dark Souls family in a lot of ways. And
Mhm.
actually it's part of those uh basically we call them Soulsborns.
Yeah.
Um and it's that whole sort of genre, that hardcore action RPG. Um
Mhm.
the heavy survival elements, uh the basically a demand for you to master the combat and the map. And these games are very technical, um,
Mhm.
and they are not very player friendly. I guess
Right.
is they kind of, the whole thing is you're gonna die a lot, and get good.
Yeah. 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 The core of it is that for the most part, the game is very fair with you. For the most part, enemies are slow and they telegraph their movements. But if you do get hit, they have these wide hit boxes and it gives you opportunity to dodge around and to attack them however you want to. But if you mess up, then you are going to be punished. Um,
I think it's interesting you said that the games are very fair, because a lot of people think that they aren't. What I would say is that the stakes are very high.
mhm,
Um, it is fair in the sense that you have plenty of opportunities,
mhm.
but if you mess up, you will die.
Yeah, yeah. And frankly, a lot of the times, unless you just start off and you dodge around, you're going to die because you need the information of how this enemy works before you can actually master how to beat it, if that makes sense. And this goes for like normal enemies and bosses as well.
Yeah.
So you're going to die a lot. Yeah, you're going to die a lot at bosses, but you're also going to die a lot at normal enemies. They do a lot of damage, and they can really mess you up, especially when you have multiple enemies. If you don't know what you're doing and you're not timing things correctly, yeah, you're gonna get punished. That's just the way that the game's made. And the thing about it, I mean, the allure of these types of games, if you've never played one, is that where regular power fantasies are, they give you a ton of, well, power, and you're able to conquer pretty much anything. I think of kind of like the original God of War, which I didn't enjoy that game. But you mash the X button in the early game and you're just like destroying things and ripping things in half, and like you just feel super powerful. In this game, you don't feel very powerful. So when you actually take down a boss that you've been dying at and dying at and dying at, it is one of, in my humble opinion, one of the best experiences in gaming, because it feels so good that you are finally able
Yeah.
um, to defeat the thing that's been giving you trouble, and you have gotten better. You can see your progress as you play the game. So I mean, cards on the table, I love the Dark Souls series, and so this game as well. This game was actually the top of my list. The reason that I wanted to buy a PS4, obviously there's a handful of games, but Bloodborne was the first one. Like that's the one. Whenever I get a PS4, like I'm going to get that and I'm gonna play through it, because I enjoy these games so much. Maybe I am a bit of a masochist. I don't know. I don't know. You die a lot. You die a lot. You lose progress. You get frustrated because you lose all your experience. But man, it feels awesome. I mean, even just playing it over again this weekend, it feels awesome to destroy a big bad in these games. You feel great. It's good stuff.
Well, And I think too, like one of the things is that yes, it demands a mastery of the combat and learning how to read enemies. Um, but it's these are very, I guess I would say, just very technical games.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of depth to the combat in this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I basically, I'm a very, when I played, I was super dodgy. I played a skill build, so it was like I would sort of dip in, stab somebody for a couple seconds, and then dodge back out. A lot of shotgun parrying, um,
Mm-hmm.
so things like that. But it's a, uh, you know, I think like the reason we're sort of talking about this is because this is in a lot of ways, the games that we talk about. I mean, besides us just liking them or just, it's like these are high water marks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned the fact that you bought a PlayStation 4. Like the reason the PlayStation 4 was on the map was primarily because of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was like one of the big selling points. And this is arguably, I think, one of the reasons to own a PS4
Mm-hmm.
is it's this game is a bit of a, it's a legacy piece, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a high watermark, and it deserves, even if it's not exactly your style, for somebody who might not enjoy these types of games, I think it definitely at least deserves, a fair amount of respect.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah, definitely. So one of the interesting things is that I feel like this game was almost universally praised when it came out. Um, I don't think this game is for everyone. This game,
oh
because of
no,
its difficulty level, and also the way it kind of throws you into the deep end pretty early. So in the way that I played the game, there's two main bosses in the first area. Okay. One is actually optional. You don't even have to fight him if you don't find him. I didn't find him until after I had beaten the other boss. The other boss that is not optional that you have to beat is, to me, was one of the hardest bosses in the game.
Father G.
Yes. Yeah. Papa
So
G don't play.
yeah, Papa G is he is not fun.
Father Gascoigne is his name, but he has multiple. Halfway through the battle, he transforms into a werewolf. Okay, he's already difficult from the start. He's got a shotgun and then a huge axe, so he's got wide range. And then when he turns into a werewolf, he's really fast, and he just starts. He gets very very aggressive.
He's
Um,
he's really fast, and he hits like a freaking bus.
yeah. Hmm. So, um, lots of people if this game is not for you, a lot of people will give up there because he seems so insurmountable because the difficulty just ramps up. Now, it's a difficult game from the start. You've probably, seen the death screen a dozen times at least before you get up to him. But it ramps up so much with him. Like I can remember the first time I played it, someone who's played through all three Dark Souls games. I remember finally getting to his werewolf transformation after dying a handful of times and just being like, that felt like a triumph. And then seeing his werewolf form, I'm just like, what the heck is going on? And just getting completely wrecked by that. So yeah, he's difficult. All that to say is that this is. I totally understand this game is not for everyone. I'm not saying everyone is going to enjoy this game. I'm saying that what this game does, it does very well. And it definitely, to me, this is a type of game that I really enjoy. Um, so with that, I do also want to talk about what makes it unique within these types of games that were, these Soulsborne games. It was released in between Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. So One thing that Miyazaki was trying to do with this game is he was trying to make now first of all, there's the entire aesthetic of this game is different. Dark Souls games, as the name implies, they are dark, but they are more swords and sorcery, right? They feel more, you're a knight in armor for the most part, battling kind of like these.
Kind of a Dark Ages, medieval type feel,
Yes,
sort of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And they still have horror elements because I mean they can be scary games, one because they're difficult, but then it does take from the more macabre um kind of imagery throughout the games. But this one goes hard in that direction. And in addition to that, the fighting itself is it's still similar, but the way that the gameplay is changed with this one is that it is very much more aggressive. In the Dark Souls games, you can, well, for one thing, you don't have a shield in Bloodborne. Okay, in Dark Souls, you normally have a sword and shield, so you can
Yeah.
use your shield to block attacks, but to learn from your enemies. In Bloodborne, that's gone. And in fact, the game encourages you to continue attacking and to be aggressive because when you get hit, you can actually get a portion of your life back if you attack your enemy right after you get hit. So it is very much pushing you to continue fighting and not play defensively, but to play very offensively as much as you can. There's a stamina bar, and when it runs out, you can't do any. You can't run, you can't dodge, you can't attack.
It's
So
well, it's significantly, I think, too, like and I think you might have been getting there, but it is significantly faster
yeah.
than either one of the Souls games that preceded it. Just as far as the general like action slash combat flow,
Hmm.
I think too, and I mentioned it before, but the shotgun parry, like there are side firearms in this game,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
they are used to a great extent for the most part. I use the term shotgun parry. There is a way to, if you hit you can use other weapons. You can use other firearms to do this, but the shotgun, because of its blast range and everything else, is optimal. Is you know but
Hmm.
there's a point in an enemy's attack sequence that if you can basically interrupt them right before they were going to hit you with a shotgun, like if you pull that, if you drop a round into them at the right time, it will stun them and you can whack them for like additional damage,
For massive damage, throw them
massive
onto their
damage.
back and attack them for massive damage.
Basically, yes.
Destroy the giant enemy crabs.
Whoa.
Anyways,
Whoa. But I think too, one of the other things that distinguishes this is, and it's not to say that there wasn't some of that, like, I think in a lot of ways it does sort of share a bit of an aesthetic with the Souls games,
hmm
but I think in a way too that this game presses in, and I haven't played much of the Souls games,
hmm
um, but this one presses into sort of almost a Lovecraftian design and a Lovecraftian sort of mythos or type mythos,
hmm
uh, much more so than the Dark Souls games. So
Right, right. And the way that this game plays, so I went into it blind, which isn't very difficult because the story, if you don't know anything about Dark Souls, the story in these types of games is not given to you throughout the game. You have to go searching for it. The way that characters talk to you in Dark Souls games is very much like you are not the main character of this story. You're just kind of a side character in their mind, and so it's very off putting. It makes you feel very alone in this dark world. And Bloodborne does the same thing. But that being said, Bloodborne starts off as more of a gothic horror type of game, right?
Yes.
You're kind of like in this dapper, like suit, even if it's kind of ripped up in torment. It's almost like a twisted fairy tale version of like Sherlock Holmes. But much much darker, and with werewolves and things like that. But it has this kind of like gothic Victorian feel to it. With the enemies that you're first fighting are these deformed humans with pitchforks and torches and things like that. So running down the streets, and so it feels like a gothic horror game for when it starts out. But gradually, as you play, things get more and more twisted and frankly uncomfortable with a lot of the things that they're talking about. They start introducing these ideas of these old gods, and how the blood of these old gods can heal people, but then it makes them go insane, and how these other people are trying to figure out how to become one of these gods, or reach out to them and speak to them and transcend their current mode of being, and just really really weird stuff, and it becomes more of a Lovecraftian tale by the end of it, if you're even following the story, which frankly, in my first playthrough, I could not.
That
I
story
I
is a
could get
little
any of it.
incoherent. I mean, it follows this sort of like the Dark Souls where it reveals a lot of the lore through the loading screens,
Hmm.
through
Yep.
little
Item
excerpts, yeah, on the item descriptions and
descriptions, yeah.
stuff like that, yeah. Um, and I mean, I'll be honest, I have no idea what the story is about other than I fought a big thing. Or no, I fought a dude who once he got out of his chair was stupid fast and hard to kill. But then I did kill him, and in the new game plus or whatever, I got his scythe thing. So
Nice,
I'm like,
nice.
your toy is mine now, fool.
Yeah. I know I couldn't see these huge beings all throughout the world, and then after I killed a spider that looks like a slug, that has a bunch of spiders around him, then I could see it.
Well, I think that has more to do with this game has a couple different sort of like currency levels,
Mhm.
and the one in particular that I think you in order to see all of the big old gods or great
Mhm.
ones or whatever, you actually need that they call this resource insight,
Right.
and you get it for a few different things. Like the first time you see and a certain type of enemy, you'll gain insight. The first time you die or kill an enemy, you get insight.
Mhm.
I think you can just find it, like you can just find it in different chests and stuff from time to
The
time.
Yeah, the resource or the item that will give you more insight is called Madman's Knowledge.
No, that's what it is.
Um,
Yeah.
so that you can get more insight into what these beings are. And it's not the first enemies that you fight. It's actually the first boss that you fight gives you
Okay.
insight. So you're seeing these otherworldly creatures, and once you see them, then you have kind of insight into what this other world is, into what these other god beings are. Is kind of, and this is one thing that, even if you don't like the way that FromSoft gives you the story in these games, you have to admit they pay attention to detail. Like the way that it tells the story is through, this body over here in the corner is actually the body of this other character. You can tell by what they're wearing that they're this previous character, or because it's found in this one area, and yeah, what they're wearing or their armor or something like that. It alludes to what is going on in the world, and it gives lore through things like that, which is pretty amazing. I think it also bleeds over into just the gameplay of the game itself. The areas that you go through are very meticulous in the way that they place enemies, in the way that like they teach you certain things, and then in the way that they change what they've taught you so that you fall into traps. In the way that areas kind of loop back on each other. It is extremely well done, and yeah, like I said, meticulously placed in order to tell the story and in order to give you a very curated gameplay experience as well. And within that world, the way the game is set up is you're able to tackle problems a lot of different ways. So if you continue to die and die and die, then you can, level up a little while and try and, get some better stats. You can try on a new weapon and see if that'll help you. Or you can just stop playing for a while and think through how you're going to actually, tackle this problem, and you come back to it, and it's easier the next time you come back to it. It's a strange sensation. But I had found that I'd beaten a few bosses that way, of just like giving myself some distance and then coming back, and it's a lot not easier necessarily, but it comes easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think some of that might have to do with there is sort of it's an action RPG. So there are
Hmm.
some RPG elements. So there are stats to be built up
Hmm.
and maxed out, or, whatever. And so
Hmm.
you can, with enough time, if you want to grind for long enough, you can sort of brute force your way through this game. You
Right.
can you can sort of load up on health, you can load up on stamina, you can load up on things that will uh or stats. You can
Augment.
load up on these stats that will make survival a little more accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. And augment your stats too. I don't
Yes.
know about you. I did not use any of like the fire paper or the bolt paper or anything like that. I just didn't use very many
Uh
consumables.
I Molotov cocktails.
Those are nice.
I did
Occasionally.
use a bunch of those. And then actually, the first time I beat Father G
Hmm.
was with there's an exploit where you can get up on the roof if you
Okay.
and you can just throw stuff at them. And so I just emptied out my inventory. I threw like every stone, these poison knives, the Molotov cocktails, and then I went down and actually dealt with them. And that because he is even in his natural form, and I think I probably should have just it should have been one of those situations. I had died numerous times to him,
Hmm.
and it was just like, um, yeah. I actually weird story about him is I actually went all the way through the door. Like I got into the next part of the game without having to fight him. And then
Whoa.
when I came back through, he was there waiting for me, and it wouldn't let me just go back through the door, so I had to fight him then. But there was,
Huh.
yeah, I actually was able to sidestep him for a little bit. Um,
Even with the cutscene and everything?
well, he would like when it was like at whatever point it was the first time I went through, he wasn't there, and so I
Okay.
just like
Okay.
walked
You
through
didn't
the cemetery.
trigger that cutscene. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Huh.
but then
Interesting.
when I came back through, he was there waiting for me.
Yeah. Huh.
So
Well, there you go. No, I stumbled on that guy and I got my butt handed to me.
no, he's awful.
Yeah. Uh, so that's the thing, though. That's why I say that I can tend to be a bit of a masochist. Yes, he's awful in how he feels so overpowered, but looking back, and I want you to, if you don't have your own kind of like favorite bosses, that's something I want to kind of talk about too. He's one of my favorites because of how he forces you to get better at the game, and like based on what he's doing, he also teaches you how to use your shotgun and how to use your weapons and how to use range and when to. when to dodge, but then also, know when to run away for a little while because he's in a big, graveyard. So you actually can run for a while if you want to use up your stamina doing that. Um, but because he comes so early in the game, I think he's also kind of a teaching boss, but it's teaching in the way that like your dad would throw you in the pool to teach you how to swim, kind of teaching. Um, it's not hold your hand teaching in the
No,
slightest.
it's it's the way that you would teach. It's the way that my dad taught me how to play chess. Uh,
Just
it's
beating you relentlessly.
just you're just gonna get clobbered, and when you actually get that victory, it's because you earned it.
Right, right. And it feels so good. And that's kind of what propels you on to the rest of the game is like, okay, I can do this. Like it's not impossible and I can get better if I just continue to work at it, either thinking through strategies or changing things up or going to grind for a little while. That's always an option. So in a sense, I mean, like he's certainly, if not probably the most memorable boss to me, because it was such a high ramp up in difficulty. But then also you get a nice little cutscene with him, and it's just the whole experience, the where how he's in a graveyard and how you're dodging past like gravestones in order to get some distance between you and him. Just the whole thing is very memorable for me. And he's got a very tragic backstory as well, if you're one to look into it. I didn't stumble on any of it when I was playing, so I didn't know anything about him. I just knew he was attacking me, and then he turns into a werewolf, and geez, blow his head off. Yeah,
Well,
throw a Molotov cocktail at him.
you and I had sort of talked about the way that so the part of this lore is absolutely indecipherable, and just without I don't know, without the aid of the wiki,
Right.
you are very unlikely. But basically, what happens is, and you sort of touched on it earlier, but this blood ministration that's applied to you will eventually turn people into beasts
Mm-hmm.
and into these raging monsters, and a lot of what you're actually fighting is basically people, normal weak-willed people who or at least in the early stages of Yarnum, who just basically succumb to the beast, you
Mm-hmm.
know
Yep.
with like there's still actually a lot of human in them in a lot of
Right.
ways.
Right.
um So you start out, but then but basically, the longer you're able to fight this thing off, and you had explained this to me, the more grotesque and big and powerful you get. So like when you're fighting the cleric beast or
Mm-hmm.
Amelia or anything, like these people fought it off, and one of the reasons they fought it off is because of their ties to the church and the sort of the extra willpower that it gave these individuals. But
Mm-hmm.
Father G was actually a hunter in the church,
Right.
and he
Yeah.
had a partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sad.
Hmm.
Sad. He had a wife and two daughters,
Hmm.
um, which I say had. Depending on what you do, the daughters might live or might die. But that's depending on what you do. And again, you only find that out through like item descriptions, which is weird. Or you could just go to YouTube and check it out, and that's how I learned about it. But it's really cool. It's interesting that it's there, even when it doesn't really matter when you're playing the game. Well, I take that back because there's an item that you can use to make him kind of go crazy. But excuse me. Um, yeah, so that's Father Gascoigne, and he's a really good one. The way that they, well, like we said in the original area, because yeah, you have these weak-willed people, they almost seem more humanoid, but as the game goes on, it gets more and more twisted, and things look more and more strange, And I mean, this game feels like playing a nightmare, honestly. The
Yeah.
grotesque imagery of it. But then also, here's another thing that I've noticed going back to the game is that one thing that makes me supremely uncomfortable about this game, even more so than Dark Souls, is because it's constantly pushing you forward. The gameplay wants you to play very aggressively, even if you don't know what you're doing, right? Even if you've never seen this enemy before, you just simply, when you dodge, you should dodge into attacks. Whereas in Dark Souls, you could get away with dodging back because you have a shield. And if you take a hit, you can still use your shield. Whereas with this game, if someone comes in for a swipe at you, you should dodge into that swipe so that you'll miss and end up behind the enemy. Little things like that, where the game constantly is trying to get you, even when there's like these scary monsters on screen, it is pushing you forward into places that you don't naturally want to go. So my natural reflex, I mean, like I said, is to dodge back, to get out of the hit radius. But more often than not, their hit radius actually goes farther, and so you'll get hit if you dodge back. Whereas if you dodge into them, you've got a better chance of actually missing their attacks. And you see these grotesque beings and these strange, because it's Lovecraftian, you begin seeing more out of place, weird honeycomb patterns on people's heads and just all kinds of disturbing imagery. That, like I said, I mean, it feels like you're playing a nightmare as you continue to play this game.
Strange giants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's clear. And that was another thing, as you mentioned, like there's the church in this game. Church is a very it does not describe the connotations that we have for the word church does not necessarily describe what these group of people
No.
is in this game. It's only a church in the sense that they are trying to seek out these godlike creatures, the old gods, or what they're called, or they're basically historians trying to seek deeper and deeper into the tombs that are located beneath the city in order to find out about previous races. Or yeah, they're trying to reach out and somehow understand these other gods. But then when things break loose, when this beast scourge comes out, then they're also the ones employing the hunters to fight back. So it's not it's not like a we're gonna have worship services church. It's like a it's like an entire military force, but also academia. So it's everything about this game is strange. Um,
Yeah, I think too, you kind of, just there's no good sort of segue into this, but we need to talk about the strangeness of this game, Josh.
mhm.
We've
Yep.
sort of been dancing around it. There is a very strange obsession with blood
Oh yes.
and
Hmm.
uh birth and
Hmm.
not to get too gross here, but there is a lot of reference to Menzies. Um,
Yeah, so this is something for our bro Chacho. No, we didn't actually even record it, so never mind.
no, it
We
was
were
just
talking before the episode. I didn't even realize what this word meant. Um, and Nate filled me in on what mensis is. Mensis is how it's pronounced in the game. So I
mhm.
don't know if it's mensis menses. But they
But
pronounce
it
things
well,
weird.
it has like listen, even if they're not using it exactly the same way,
Right.
it's tied to that term.
Right. And a little side note. Throughout the game, they call some of these creatures amygdala,
Mhm.
and the amygdala is part of the brain. So
Mhm.
like they even mispronounce that word as well. Maybe it's just because it's a Japanese game, pronouncing English words. I don't know, but it was strange to me throughout the game because also the idea of a brain. Brains are they play into some of the story as well. The Is it Lawrence? It's not Lawrence. It's the other guy. It's the guy in the chair who points out to the pier. I can't remember what his name is, but he
Oh, the one before you fight.
Rom, the vacuous spider.
Oh my gosh, that just going back briefly to sort of like boss fights. That
Mhm.
might have been the one of the ones I hated the most.
Oh, really? Okay.
Rom sucked.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Because Rom himself is kind of a pushover. It's mostly the
Well,
all
that
the freaking spiders.
it's his spider lanes.
Hmm.
He wasn't so bad. Like
Yeah.
when I could actually hit him, but it was like sometimes getting to him
Right.
was the problem.
Hmm. Yeah. There's like
So
beams of light shooting at you, and then there's like 50 spiders that you have to kill. Yeah. Yeah. Um. No, it wasn't. I'm not saying he was easy. I'm saying like him just himself was a pushover in terms of like based on the other bosses. But yeah, everything surrounding him made him much more difficult. So it was kind of he was very unassuming as well. But anyways, no. So there is a character. So there was a split within the church within the game lore. Okay, there's a split within the church of how you are to understand these old gods and actually reach out. There was a faction that believed that you need a better understanding in order to do so. And this character says that our eyes are not open yet. We need to line our brain with eyes in order to see into basically this other plane of being, to see these other gods. That's kind of the way that I took it, is like when we talked about insight and madman's knowledge, like people go mad after seeing these old gods, and and there are these creatures called amygdala that can also transport you between worlds sometimes. And so that, like, I was thinking that's symbolic in terms of the way that you get insight. It's a brain, it's this creature that's a stand-in for the way that you use your brain in order to go into this other plane, kind of a thing. So anyways, all that to say, that was kind of a side note. When we were talking about Mensis, it within the game, that's actually this faction that says that we'll reach out, um, as opposed to insight to reach out to these gods. The school of Mensis was created, that said that we can continue to imbibe the blood of the old gods in order to become more like them. Like that's how we're going to make ourselves into gods, is to continue to basically like pump ourselves full of their blood, and to research and dig down deeper into these tombs and figure out who these gods were, and basically create ourselves in their own image. So it's all kinds of weird and creepy and gross. So that's the school of Mensis, which, like you were talking about, that's reference to menstruation.
Yep.
So that's beautiful. I did not even realize that, but it makes sense in the context of if amygdala were used as a stand-in for the brain, like the school of Mensis was trying to birth another type of humanity and trying to birth another god into being, if that makes sense. Although, menstruation is like the failed birth, and so like you get all this weirdness and grossness there as well. Going back to what you said, the game is very much obsessed with blood. There's blood
Yeah.
absolutely everywhere. This is not a game to play around children. I learned that within the first 5 minutes of popping this game in.
Oh my goodness.
It didn't scar my kids, but I was just kind of like, yeah, we're not gonna play this anymore. Yeah, that was the end of that. But as you continue, the obviously it's called Bloodborne. You get injected with blood at the beginning of the game, and you use blood vials. So you continuously are injecting yourself with blood in order to gain more life. The experience point, or the basically the why can't I think of the word? The money.
The currency.
The currency, that's the word I was thinking of. The
Yeah.
currency within the game are blood echoes. So you're
Yes.
getting blood from enemies. Your character, as you gain more blood echoes, because you can only gain them from killing other, well, mostly 99% of the time, you only get them from killing other beings in the world. Um, as you gain more blood echoes, like you see the splatter all over his garb. So at
Oh,
certain points of the
yeah.
game, you can just be like completely red and covered in blood, and it means you need to go back and spend all those blood echoes, or you're gonna lose them. Um,
There
so,
was there was a moment where I was playing and he wasn't covered in red, but he was like this sort of just like mud
mhm,
and like I was like,
yeah.
man, this dude's dirty.
Yes, yeah. And it is absolutely all over this game because of I mean, well, that's just the theme of the game. Like that's just a big part of it. But it does have these ideas. I mean, it's a horror game, but it has these ideas of existence and going in between humanity and beast and God and it is all kinds of strange and weird. And so like, yeah, these ideas of blood and birth and failure and insight and brain, like all of these themes you see in the enemies, you see in the equipment and things, and so it is very unsettling almost the entire time that you're playing the game. And I enjoy that aesthetic, but it's very gross. Like I enjoy certain types of horror, and this is much more up my alley. I'm not like a slasher film fan, but this is more, yeah, like Lovecraftian and gothic horror, and
Yeah. Well, I think like the thing though is it's Lovecraftian, but it's also with a super healthy amount of body horror.
yes, yes,
Or
definitely.
maybe unhealthy amount of body horror. Because like Lovecraft is sort of, and this is the strength of Lovecraft is sort of like he describes things in the vaguest possible of terms, and
Mhm.
so that your brain does like a lot of the work in constructing these phantasms or the fears. Whereas in Bloodborne, we see the things they look weird. They've got tentacles, some of them in places where people should not have tentacles. You know, it's like I'm not trying to be gross or racy or anything. I'm just like, like think Cthulhu,
Right, right.
kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah, it's this, it's gross.
Yeah, and it feels wrong. It just feels wrong. I remember. So we mentioned earlier that there's a point in the game where there are these creatures that like what I referred to earlier, the amygdala. They're these huge, like basically if it's like a human stick bug. So these huge, like thin characters, except they're like 10 times as big as a human, and their head looks sort of like an inverted pine cone, if that makes any sense. And you can't see them through most of the game. And then you beat a certain boss who apparently is like holding back part of something that had happened. I don't want to get too far into the lore, but basically, after you beat this boss, then you can see them, and they're crawling all over the city that you're in. And it is, to me, it's absolutely terrifying because you're like, I don't know if they're going to swoop down and try and kill me because this thing is like enormous and it's going to destroy me. And yeah, I mean, there's unsettling things like that all over. But it's certainly a game full of madness in its visual motifs that it
Yeah.
has. Um, so, anyways, I feel like I've kind of rambled. I don't necessarily, we don't have to talk about the story anymore because we don't really have to, we don't have to explain anything. If anyone's interested, sure, maybe we can do, maybe I can do a bite size and just tell you what I've learned
The story
from.
is well, and it is one of those things where it is a little bit incoherent in the
Mhm,
sense that like it doesn't lay out any like definite like the story beats are hard to find and hard to follow.
mhm,
And so it's, if you're looking for story, you're gonna dig through it. I think
right.
I do think, and this is, I think, from what I understand, this is sort of like just part and parcel with the Souls stuff in general, but just the connectivity of the map and just
Yeah.
how there's a bajillion different little passages everywhere to get anywhere else.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And there are a number of completely optional places that you might not find in your playthrough. I didn't. There were some bosses that I didn't fight at all because I didn't know that it even existed when I played my first playthrough. So there, I mean, there's a lot in this game that, I mean, the developers don't really. It's not going to hold your hand. So if you miss something, that's kind of on you. Um,
Hmm.
that said, I've also heard that in order to trigger some things, it is very particular and obtuse. And those two things don't really go together very well.
Well, there's a quest line for the Blades of Mercy, and I can't remember.
Hmm.
I was actually trying to look her up. Um, the Blade of Mercy, which actually turns into it's a trick weapon that it goes from a sort of sword into two daggery things.
Hmm.
Eileen the Crow,
Yep.
and in order, there's two ways that you can get that. One of them is you can kill her,
Hmm.
um,
Which
which
is
is
difficult because she's like at the beginning of the game.
and even when
The first time, yeah, sorry.
yeah, and even sort of so yeah, she can be a little bit beefy, and kind of hard to deal with. And it's just like yeah, like so many of just the enemies in this game, period, just hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, but there is a rather convoluted sort of like quest line that you can follow, and she will reward you with these at the end of that. But
Hmm.
uh it is definitely above and beyond the Call of Duty.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Man, oh man. So, if you can't tell, if I haven't said it enough times, I really enjoy this game. Playing it, picking it up again, and playing it. It makes me want to do another run of it,
Mm.
and particularly with a guide this time, just so that I can do all those quest lines that I didn't do this time, and do a completely separate build. So, like, because you're pumping different stats into your character, you don't the way that you level up in this game is you don't get a set amount of, HP and attack and things like that every time you level up. You get basically a point that you can put into one of your stats. And so you use that for different bonuses with your different weapons. So I went basically your main attacking weapons are either strength weapons or skill weapons, which is basically big and blunt or fast and nimble. Those two words mean the same thing. But anyways, I
Well,
play.
nimble has like it's an agility.
Mhm.
It's skill versus strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I played a strength build, so I want to go back and play another skill build, and this has definitely made me want to do that, but I can't. I have too many games on my backlog to do that right now.
oh,
But
pish
I
posh.
did. Well, I mean, there's Neo too. So like I have even other games like this game that I can do. So I
This
don't
is
I
true.
don't know. I don't
And
know.
we
Well,
have BioShocktober that we still got to get through. So.
BioShock to oh man, oh man. That's a good one too. Um, I've played a little bit of that. I haven't reported on it yet, but I've played a little bit and I'm
Mhm.
digging it. Um, anyways, before we go, I did just want to ask: are there any other standout bosses to you in this game? So there's a total of 22 bosses throughout the entire game, including the DLC, which I didn't finish because it's freaking hard. And
I
then some that I missed.
okay, well, I just sort of talking about like because yeah, that I I did almost all of the additional like I did almost
Nice.
all of them. Uh I can't remember which ones. It was there are two of the DLC bosses that I never beat. That I can't remember.
Hmm.
Basically, the last two of the DLC bosses, and there was this one, and I think it was like there's 3 of them, and they spawn. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you
Are
know,
they
I'm
are they robed?
no, they're
Okay.
kind of big. Uh,
3 was that the
I know which ones you're talking about, where it's like the 3, and as you eliminate them, they get like one has a sword, one
yeah,
has like a
yeah, the Yarnum Shadows. Yeah.
yeah.
Um
No.
so are you talking about the Living Failures? Because there were a ton of those. There was
Well,
more than
they're
just 3 of them.
DLC bosses. Give, excuse me. Give me a second. They're DLC bosses. I'm starting to fade. Uh,
Sorry.
no, it's all right.
I should shut up.
No, it's not that at all. I'm just
It's late.
it's late and I didn't sleep great last night, but that's
Mm.
not your fault. That's okay. I'm gonna look these up. And of course, this is great radio. Everybody's super excited to hear all this. Um, come on. Uh,
I think it's the Living
yeah,
Failures that you're talking
yeah, it
about.
was Living Failures. Um, that was where I stalled out.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
because I wanted Lady Maria's weapon,
Uh-huh.
because I heard that it was pretty good.
So
And
I did beat the Living Failures because there's a way like I could that they took me so stinking long to beat because they have this one attack that basically like casts meteor.
yeah, and it's super hard to dodge,
Yes.
and it's just yeah, it hits so stinking hard. And I
Mhm.
think like
It can
the
one shot.
problem is, yeah, well, and it's with my skill build, it's very like I played as a skill build.
Mhm.
Um and I use the chain whip for the majority of the game, but it is a very glass cannon build. So it's like I
Yeah.
can get in there and do a ton of damage, but then like I have to move very like it also demands that you just get out of the like there's not a lot of like I can't absorb hits.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
I take a hit or two and then I'm gone,
Mm. Mm.
which is and I appreciate that about the game. I mean, like there's so many good. Like, I think one of the things like so it was like the Living Failures is probably the one boss fight that sort of sticks out to me as just being like, yeah, that's the one that I wish I would have beaten before I finished the game.
Mhm.
You know what I liked? Is it Ludwig? Did you fight Ludwig?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I
That
was
fight
gonna
was rad.
oh
That
my
was a
goodness.
rad fight.
Yes, it was. And that, I mean, just even so we talked about how like, the longer that you fight off this beast inside you, the stronger that it gets before it finally overtakes you. And Ludwig is this deformed human horse creature that looks like it's still struggling to even uh burst out of it's very much like the thing where the thing John Carpenter's the thing where it like it bursts out of the dogs. It's like that with a horse, but it's really nimble and it has this huge freaking sword that glows. Yeah, that battle was awesome.
When you get that sword, it's a
Mhm.
pretty good sword.
Yeah. Yeah. That
It's a
was a
good sword.
great fight too, because I felt like I had gotten pretty far on it. Like pretty consistently, I could get pretty far and die. And it was like the last, third of the battle was so difficult. Um, because I could get that far. If that makes any sense. Yeah, Ludwig definitely stands out to me. He was a DLC boss. And then after him was the Living Failure. If I recall correctly, then it was the Living Failures, and then Maria was right after that. And Maria just wrecked my face after I finally beat the Living Failures. So that's when I was like, yeah, this DLC is too tough. I'm supposed to be at a higher level and then beat the game. Um,
So, so you never fought the Orphan of Kos either
nope,
then.
nope, I didn't
I'm
get that
looking
far.
at that. That's like So that and Maria are the two bosses that I never fought at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. Me
Oh,
me
he
too.
looks
I mean,
so
there were
gross.
others that I missed, but yeah. Well, yeah, because he carries around his sack. He's an orphan. Sorry for anyone who doesn't know
Oh,
what I mean. I don't mean genitals. I mean like womb. What's that called? Come on,
a
I have some.
placenta.
Yes, there you go, placenta. And when you beat him, you get a piece of that placenta as a weapon. So, um, yeah,
Really?
this is
Oh,
yeah.
that's disgusting.
Hmm.
I didn't know that. Well, yeah, I think one of the things too is like, so one of the big mechanics here, and we sort of probably should have talked about this earlier. There are firearms, but all of your weapons are called trick weapons,
Hmm.
and so they're different forms. And
Hmm.
we may have, like I said, I've been kind of like fighting it off all night. So if I sound like a raving lunatic, it's this game hasn't taken that big a hold of me. It's just that I'm just um anyways, the trick weapons are kind of just really just the weapons in general.
Hmm.
You and I sort of talked about it, and I did. There were a number of them that I really liked. Now, there were some weapons where I'm just like, this just feels weird and dumb, and I don't get it.
Hmm.
But it's also I had a skill build, and so each one, some of these weapons require very specific builds for them to be useful.
Hmm.
Or we were talking about blood tinge builds and stuff like that, which are
Right.
but it's the weapons in this game, there's a ton of them, and some of them are very, very cool, very, very useful, and but there's a fair number of them that are just kind of like, eh,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
For me, for my experience, I really only played with uh mostly just one weapon, mostly the axe. And then I tried out a couple other weapons for just a short amount of time and didn't use them. I think I used one of the saws for a little while. And then after I got the DLC, I used the whirligig saw.
Mm.
So, but that was really it. I intentionally didn't, because after you learn a weapon, because like Nate mentioned, they're trick weapons, so they have different forms. Like there are two like
And you
different
can
modes for
combo you
each
can
one.
combo into and out of those trick forms for
Right.
additional damage and stuff like that. It's pretty slick actually.
Yeah, and it gets pretty deep, but you need to know your weapon. So you need to know the range of your weapon in each mode and how to use different attacks, how long your windup is for your like super strong attack and things like that. So so after I learned the axe, like I didn't really want to have to learn something else. Um so I didn't branch out very much. And that was very intentional on my part of just like I don't have the time. I like the way that this is working. And then you dump your upgrades into your weapon as well. So that's what I did. And it was always the best one for me because I didn't have enough upgrades for other weapons. So I think that talks to kind of like the expansiveness of this game is you can play it in very different ways depending on the weapons that you use. And yeah, like Nate said, a lot of them can seem very unnecessary because you don't have the right build for it, or something like that. But you need to learn it and then build around it as well. Um, but I'm trying to think. The only other boss that I wanted to mention, just because I thought it was really cool to actually fight one, was the amygdala, the
Mm,
amygdala. When
yeah.
you actually fight him, he was not particularly difficult for
No.
me. Um,
He's a bit of a pushover.
yeah, him and then the other one that's kind of similar to him in sort of like a Colosseum place. It was Murgo like after he was I can't remember what his name was. But yeah,
See, you're actually remembering a lot of character names where I'm just like, I go.
well, only because I've been watching stuff lately.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
But there was the one. Well, oh, and the shadows were really cool. I thought.
Mm,
Uh, so the one reborn is what he was called. the one that was Murgo. That's basically like a bunch of like bodies
Oh
kind of
yeah.
making one huge creature. I felt like him and the amygdala were not particularly difficult, but it felt really good to beat them. One, because the weirdness surrounding the one reborn, like you have to go to a different area, and apparently it might be a different dimension, it might be a different time, because of the way that this game plays with time in general. So that's neither here nor there. But the amygdala, I just thought was super cool to actually fight one and actually take it down. I thought that felt awesome because you see them throughout the game and they're terrifying, at least to me. So,
Yeah. Well, do you remember that there's a part in the game right when you get through uh into the chapel there,
hmm
and you can sort of it might be like a sort of around the cemetery.
hmm
Like, and if you don't have enough insight, there will be this part like where you'll walk up to something and you'll sort of notice something and then you'll just get snatched up into the air. Did that happen
I
to you at all?
oh yes, I mentioned that on the podcast
Okay,
when I
okay.
was playing it, and that freaked me the heck
Yeah.
out.
The first
Oh
time
my goodness.
the first time it happened to me, I was like, "What the heck is this? What
Yeah.
is this trash?"
Yeah. There's this
Yeah, yeah.
enormous creature that you can't see that picks you up and like sucks you into its face. It was horrifying, especially in this game because like by the time that you get there, you're like low on life and whatever. You have a
Yep.
ton of blood echoes, so you need to get back to level up, and then just out of nowhere, you get picked up by nothing. Like you start levitating, and oh my goodness, yeah,
Yeah.
that freaked me out
That part's
because
neat.
it's a physical manifestation of what you were talking about earlier, how Lovecraft would define things vaguely, so your brain has to kind of make up what this thing actually was.
Yeah.
That's what, oh my goodness, it got under my skin. So, and then
Yeah.
you then it things change later on in the game and you actually get to see them and they're still terrifying. So
Yeah.
yeah, this game is a nightmare. It's a nightmare that
But
I really, really enjoy.
it's I
So
think
weird.
like the thing is like so we've been talking about it that we both really like this game.
hmm
Um and I think the things that stand out to me are like this has some of the most meaningful combat
hmm
and like combat loops and just progression loops that I've ever played in a game. Like
hmm
I'm not sure that there's a lot of I would just go to say like we've seen in some ways like I think uh Dark Dark Souls as a general and Bloodborne in particular, like you can see their fingerprints, especially when it comes to combat in other games.
hmm
And you and I sort of have even talked about this. Like the thing that makes it really hard for me to play Breath of the Wild is that the combat is so sort of like bare bones. And I've experienced this really deep and rich combat system that Bloodborne
hmm
has. And I'm kind of like, I'm not saying that every game needs to be as technical or as complex as Bloodborne, but like, man, it'd be nice to get something a little beefier.
Yeah.
But you can, I mean, like even the I would say like the God of War reboot in a
hmm
lot of ways, that combat has a much more strategic, intentional feel that I think is direct lineage from Bloodborne.
Yeah.
And just like we I think we're sort of throwing Bloodborne out there as sort of a proxy for all of the Souls games in general, and
hmm
that the things that these games do right is specifically with combat and stuff are noticeable and good, and actually I think help like uh, okay, so like one of the things that we didn't talk specifically about this, but the heavy swing, light swing,
hmm
and like that's all shoulder buttons. It's all R1, R2, L1, L2 kind of
hmm
stuff. Like the actual face buttons are used for other things entirely. And that's a stroke of genius in my opinion.
hmm
Um
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
just
It feels really good to play once you learn how to play it. For sure.
Yes,
It
for sure.
does. And again, it's kind of trial by fire in how you're supposed to learn how to play the game. And yeah, one thing is I was thinking about this past week, that I did want to say as well is I do recognize that, especially from software, that sometimes the Dark Souls games can seem like a fluke. Sometimes the battle mechanics, the way that these games are made, the gameplay of these games, it feels like it kind of came out of nowhere and it was done so well, by these dedicated people. And don't get me wrong, it is to a certain extent, but like this has come from years, decades of like fine tuning
Yeah,
this type of gameplay. Because
yeah.
before Dark Souls, there was what, Kingsfield, and there were like four of those games. I mean, there
Yeah,
is it
something like
isn't
that.
Kingsfield the one I'm thinking of, or am I?
I'm
But
pretty.
like
I'm pretty sure that Kingsfield was a series prior to this.
they're like first person dungeon crawlers that are somewhat similar to They're similar in spirit to Dark Souls, but I just mean to say that like it has come with lots and lots of fine tuning from other systems in order to create something like this. And
Yeah,
that's why I think that this is a hallmark, is because it does so many things well. It's very intricate, it's very intentional with a lot of what it does. And it feels like a very well crafted experience. Like
yeah.
I can't think of the right word. So probably
But excuse me. It's very fine tuned.
yeah,
It's very,
definitely.
very, for lack of a better word, it's very intentional. It's
Hmm.
very, um, it's almost over engineered
Yeah.
to a certain degree. But that's sort of the beauty of that is
Hmm.
that, yeah,
Yeah, and it does. I mean, it's not a super long game. I mean, it's probably 20, 25 hours, depending on your skill level.
I was gonna say, like, it took me considerably longer than that because
Okay,
I tend to be well, and some of
that's
that
true.
is I tend to be slower. I tend to be just like a little neurotic when it comes to areas. Like I'm like I want to find all the secrets. I want to like sort of like get to know this space.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I want to get to know this space on a. I was going to use the word intimate, but that's kind of this makes me feel weird. But I want to sort of at least get a little bit of
You want to
mastery.
explore every nook and
Yeah,
cranny. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It's because I had played the other Dark Souls games, that I kind of, understood the combat.
yeah. You
Um,
already had the context.
right. And on top of that, like I said, there were areas I missed. So I did not explore absolutely everything. So it took me that. But I mean, that's even how the Dark Souls games played out for me. The first Dark Souls, I put 60 hours in. And it's not a 60-hour game, but I was like grinding. I was
Yeah,
trying to seek out other things. So yeah, that totally. But I will say it's not an overly long game, and it
no,
does allow for multiple playthroughs. It has New Game Plus up to like +6, which is just crazy if you're an absolute masochist, because it gets more difficult every time you play. And there are chalice dungeons that we didn't even talk about, which are just areas like randomized areas with randomized bosses that you
hmm
fight in order to get loot, so you can equip them to your weapons to do greater damage. So there's a lot in this game. You can play this game for a long time and replay it and play it
hmm
different ways. Like because of how fine tuned it is. It allows you to play it in different ways and find new things each time. So and I think part of the storytelling kind of encourages that as well, to continue playing and notice new things every time, which is what I'm tempted to do, but I shouldn't. I shouldn't. I'm probably not going to,
Well,
because
I
what
mean,
we
just
have coming up.
postpone it.
Yes, right. Postpone it. I mean, yeah, wait until later, because what we have coming up, we've mentioned it multiple times, BioShocktober.
Yep.
Join us as we go through BioShock. BioShock is also somewhat horror. It certainly has some spooky horror elements to it.
Oh
I don't know.
yeah, there's some very distinctly unsettling sort of elements to that game.
Hmm. All right. So I'm stoked to jump in to swim my way into Rapture and figure out what that is. Now that I'm done with the Atlas Shrugged, I'm stoked to see what its ideas of objectivism come through in BioShock. So join us in BioShocktober. We'll shoot out some tweets and stuff like that, and hopefully we can all talk about it as we're going through BioShock this October as
Yeah.
our spooky game of October in 2020. But now that
Yeah.
we've talked about Bloodborne for an hour or longer, it's probably been longer than that. If you think we missed anything, if there's anything that we should have talked about, or if you just want to tell us to shut up, that's fine too. You can do that over on Twitter. Our handle is at
I'd rather they not
BDMcast.
do that part.
Hey,
I don't mean
Josh,
to interrupt you,
stop
but don't do that. Don't like listen, if you don't like listening, you can stop. Just say that.
But if
Uh
you do like listening,
if
you
you
can
do like
share with your
listening, well
friends.
then do the things
We very
Josh is
much
about
like
to tell
that.
you. Pay attention to what he's about to say.
Rate and review, subscribe. We also have a Patreon if you're interested in that. Just think of it as a little digital tip jar. But you can also contact us. Our email is thebacklog@gmail.com. We have the hashtag backlog book club on Facebook, which is probably where we'll be talking about BioShock as well. And then we do have a Discord server. So jump in that. Let us know. And you can reach out to us personally if you want, a link to the Discord or anything like that. PSN, GG, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. I generally go by Broccolope. It's spelled BROCCOLOPE. And Nate goes by
Nate_McKeever.
Oh yeah. And just to let you know, if you couldn't tell by the plug we had in the middle of our episode, we are part of the Play Well Network, and we have a lot
Yes,
of fun with those guys and their
indeed.
podcasts. You can check us all out at playwellnetwork.com for a list of our current podcasts and get into some other nerdy stuff as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And did you have any other thoughts on Bloodborne? I know I kind of just like sped us along here.
No, I think like it's a good game. Yeah, it's definitely I would throw out a bit of a caveat. This is not for everybody.
Right.
I
Yes.
I think this game is for, for lack of a better term, the hardcore.
Hmm.
Like, and if you are not prepared to sort of like be punished, well
Right.
then just avoid the game.
Yeah. There is a certain with Persona 5, I said that it takes a commitment to play that game.
Yeah.
In a different way, this game also takes a commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because you need to learn it, and
Hmm.
it doesn't pull its punches. So you learn by doing, you learn by dying, you learn by getting back up again and trying again. And if you are prone to getting frustrated at games, or if you just don't like the aesthetic, if this doesn't do anything for you, you don't like the body horror, the insanity, the madness, all that, then fine. I mean, that's totally cool. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you have to like this game. No, I'm not an elitist in that sense. I would say that this is, in my mind, it is a must play, um, because right now it is so accessible. With
Hmm.
PS5 talking about how it's on the PS Plus collection that they're doing,
Yeah.
you can find it for $10 used
I
if you
mean,
want to pick
even
it up.
if you
And
get
it's
a
so
brand
easy.
new copy of like the complete collection or whatever for $20, it's a heck of a
Hmm.
deal.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a steal.
right. And so like, sure, if you don't have a PlayStation, would I recommend you get one for this? Huh?
Eh,
Among
I
other
mean,
things.
that's
Among
that's
other
kind of
things.
what you did.
Right. Right. It was on the top of the list of games that I wanted to play. There were certainly
Yeah.
others as well, but it was the top of the list. So when I say a must play, I'm not saying like every gamer should go out and buy a PlayStation 4, but I'm saying like it is easy to access right now. So try it. Try
Yeah.
it. And with the caveat that it will take a commitment. It's not like you won't figure out if you like it within the first 30 minutes. Um,
No. Oh no. Oh no.
because it's gonna
Oh,
beat you down.
and get used to dying
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
because you're gonna do that a lot. But well, Josh, I
I
think
Our
we have.
podcast just died.
Oh,
I'm just
well,
kidding.
I feel like I'm dying. No, but we've sort of done the things that we came here to do. Uh, what should our dear listeners, our beautiful listeners, do?
You guys keep beating down your backlogs. We'll keep breaking down the benefits.
Oh, I forgot that C.S. Lewis quote
Which one was that?
about sticking.
Oh yeah,
that
putting a
one.
pipe in your mouth.
Hold on. I'm gonna. We're gonna have to do. You're gonna have.
There was
One
a
sec.
yeah.
I'm gonna pull a Bloodborne quote.
Oh,
Uh,
nice, nice, nice. The Daily
no,
Stoic. Oh yeah, no, you got it. Sorry.
and no, we were saying about the Daily Stoic.
The other day they posted. I think it was on Instagram. They posted one. I think it was Gerald Ford. I could be wrong. Might be misquoting it, but it was so simple, and I was like, oh, I like that a lot. Um, Cynicism is cowardice. It's like,
Mm,
oh shoot, that that got me. It got me.
that's a pretty
Anyways,
good one.
anyways.
Well, this is and the final word goes to Master Willem. We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes are yet to open. Fear the old blood.
Oh, it's creepy. I
Yeah, it is. All
That
right.
was James Mattis. It wasn't Gerald Ford. Just for your
Oh,
muchachos, so you can know.
I stopped
All right,
recording.
all right. I don't blame you.
So,
Boom. I will stop as well. Make sure
this
it
is
safe.
60. Is this 60?
It is 60. Yeah, I didn't even bring
Holy
that out.
moly.
We can talk,
Uh,
dude. We can talk. Yeah, that was
yeah.